Welcome to Young and Adulting, a podcast of the young adults community at Christ Fellowship Church. Our hope is to create a safe place for authentic conversation around the ins and outs of life as we all try to navigate following Jesus in the world we live in today. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the conversation.
What's up, podcast world? Welcome to the Young and Adulting podcast. This is season 6. It's entitled What I Wish I Knew. I'm really excited about today because we're joined by two incredible people. But before I tell you who they are and a little bit about them, this season is all about asking trusted voices and leaders who are a little bit further than we are. What do you wish you knew maybe in your 20s when you're getting started in life and relationships and career that we should know right now? And so I'm excited for this conversation. We're joined by Pastor James and Lisa, been a part of our church for decades, kind of stewarding marriage ministry. You have a podcast, Art of Spousing, which is so cool, by the way.
Thank you.
And so you're doing so many things. But before we maybe jump into a little bit of your story, which I want to get to, what are some maybe fun facts or some things we should know about you right as we start?
Well, a fun fact is James is an avid cyclist.
Hey.
Right.
Yeah. And so how many years? 15 years?
About
avid?
15, 16
Yeah.
years, yeah.
And you've actually mobilized it and used it to raise awareness around human trafficking, really coming against what's happening in our culture today. So I decided that I would try to be a great wife and join in an adventure with James. For 10 years, he's asking me to ride a bike with him.
Right.
And
And
finally did.
come on.
Yeah, and so 3 years ago, I had an accident on my first ride out. And it's actually a really quite funny story that I didn't know that our bodies have a coccyx, and that is
Oh,
the
yes.
end of
Yeah.
your tailbone.
Yeah. She
And
bent her coccyx.
Yes, which is really
Yeah, yeah.
weird. Yeah. So fun fact
But
about
hey,
us.
just a couple weeks ago,
Got back on the
you got
bike.
back on the bike.
High
So, yeah.
Took me a while, but I did it. So
Yeah.
I
30
didn't throw
years.
you under the bus too much
Yeah,
there.
30 years of marriage, and you're still
I'm
adventurous,
trying.
which is cool.
I'm trying.
Let's go. Well, for those of listeners who aren't familiar with your story, with how you met, all of that, I know there's some fun stuff. So why don't you give us a snapshot? How'd you start dating? How'd you meet? Who initiated?
Yeah.
Whatever.
All the things.
It's all there. How do we get started?
Well, I'll start it.
Yeah.
I'll tell the truth, and then she
Okay,
can
yeah.
Edit it.
edit it. So,
Mhm.
so it was actually my sophomore year in college. I was in school in Nashville, Tennessee, and Lisa came in as a freshman my sophomore year. We're the same age, but she went to another school and then came in.
North Carolina State
North
University.
Carolina State
which is a
University,
fun
that's
fact,
right.
yeah.
And so at the beginning of the school year, there was a bunch of people from the school just hanging out downtown Nashville, and got to meet a lot of people from different states and so forth. And Lisa was there, and we might have said hey, but didn't really connect.
Mhm.
Maybe a week later, I'm in my dorm room by myself, and I have 4 roommates in my dorm, but they're all gone. And the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and on the other end is this girl saying, "Hey, is Bobby there?" That's my roommate. And I was like, "No, he's not here."
This makes me sound like I'm like after
No,
Bobby.
no,
but
no. You
anyway.
said, well, I was supposed to meet Bobby for a walk, and I was trying to catch up with him. And I said, well, Bobby's not here, but I'm here.
Come on.
And so it was great. So we met at the track there at the school. And the funny thing is, at the time, I was actually in a long distance relationship with another girl.
So his parents had actually, if there was like an arranged marriage
Yeah.
in the 90s, it was the closest thing to arranged
The
marriage.
closest
Okay.
thing to
They
arranged
wanted
marriage.
them to
but-
get married. Yes.
But we were walking in that first time, and I actually recognized that there was something special about Lisa. It's like, this girl's amazing. And so the next day, we walked again for a long walk. And I think it was on that walk that I looked at you and said, hey, I think I'm going to marry you. And you
To
said,
that, I said, you're a crazy
right.
person. And I would not recommend anyone saying that on like the second walk. It wasn't even a date. It was a walk around the track. And so at that point, I began telling him all the things that why my life was so complicated. I
Right.
thought I would scare him off and just jolt him back into reality of
That's
like,
right.
this doesn't make any sense. But he was persistent.
Mhm.
And we became great friends, right?
Yeah, so we were great friends. I said, let's slow the roll.
Yeah.
Let's be friends. And because I was a freshman and people knew him, but they didn't know me, I'm like, I need you to go on a date, James.
That's right.
Like, go take somebody out because everyone thinks that we are a couple and we're not. And we're not going to be a couple. I'm not going to marry you. I'm not going to date you, but I want you to go on a date with someone.
That's right.
And
So I
he did. And he chose a girl. There's 3 dorms, 3 floors of girls, and he chose a girl across the hall from me.
Sending a message.
Strategic.
Send a message. Send a message. You guys are together on
That's
this.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I thought it was uncalled for and rude. And lo and behold, her name was Julie.
That's
And
right.
so my close relationship with Pastor Julie, it's just a constant reminder of James' pursuit of me and my irritation after I'd asked him to go on a date.
But you got back because you got a date.
So I got a date, and I was so excited about it. J.C. Oden, if you're out there, J.C. Oden, it was you who asked me on a date, and I'm so excited about it. So I'm waiting in my lobby of the dorm, and this was before cell phones. So
What year? Frame it.
This would have been
91.
No, this would have been 90.
Okay.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
No cell phones. And
Right.
so I'm waiting on this date, and in my lobby dorm room, the phone rings, and I answer it because I'm the only one in there because everyone else is at a basketball game out of town. And it's James
Right.
calling from a payphone.
At a basketball game with
And
all
he's
her
like,
friends.
Did JC show up? And I'm like, well, not yet. So I hung up. JC never showed up.
Yeah.
He stood me up.
It only
Wow.
cost me $50.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah.
But it was actually, no, I didn't pay for it. But it's after that, you said, hey, I think we ought to
Yeah.
give this thing a go. And
God got a hold of my heart, but he had a plan because he kept us friends, because it was very important actually
Right.
in our story that we stayed friends and just developed a relationship of getting to know each other. And so that's
it
history.
was about 6 months before we went on our first actually
Mhm.
official date.
Yep.
And the
There
rest
it
is
is.
history.
Let's go. And so how old were you when you both met?
I was 19.
Yeah.
We got
19,
married
20.
at 20. I turned 22 on our honeymoon.
Right.
So we were young married people.
Yeah, we've kind of grown up together,
Yeah.
actually. And we had our first child when we were like
25.
25. And so, so we've kind of grown up as a family,
Yep.
you know?
And now you have kids in their 20s and
27, 24, and 18.
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does.
It does
really
when people, you have little ones. And so when
Yeah.
you go, oh, it's going to go by so fast. And you're like, not really. It feels
Yeah.
like an eternity. And it actually does.
Yeah, our youngest just left for college and for a freshman year, and
Officially empty
it's
nesters.
empty nesters. That's
Wow.
right.
Yes.
But
We had our first empty
Yeah.
nester vacation. And
But it was kind of the reality, even with her going to college, is just like, okay, this is the start of like where our relationship happened in college, and it's probably gonna.
And the truth is 30 years of marriage, 27 years of our marriage, we had little people
Right.
and big
Right.
people in our house. So we're not used to not having people
Right.
around us. So now we're in a new season of remembering what it was like to
Yep.
be just us.
That's amazing. Well, a lot has changed since you first
Mhm.
Yeah.
picked up the phone or you had a pay phone or
Mhm.
since JC didn't show up. Lots changed since then, being married so long compared to then. So maybe
Mhm.
what are some perspectives that have changed or some paradigms that shifted from maybe when you first started, talking or when you were first youngly married to now empty nesters along your journey?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because once we had kids and they began to be in the years of dating, our perspective changed about a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
that's the real truth. So James and I, thankfully, God blessed us that we had great strong boundaries, and sexually we kept ourselves for each other. But as we look back on our dating relationship
Mhm.
after we've had kids and now they're dating,
Right.
we realized some of our boundaries we expected for our kids were different than the ones we
Mhm.
had for ourselves,
Right.
because life told us that there are things that we should do to
Mhm.
protect ourselves in a way, because I think there was places and spaces we put ourselves in that we had to manage boundaries and manage and care for our purity much more than we actually needed to.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
like, why did we actually put that undue stress on ourselves? So for our kids, I like, you don't need to be in a car by yourself, sitting in a parking lot,
Right.
having a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Quote
We're just-
unquote.
talking
Yeah.
about important things. I'm just like, you don't have to do that. However, we did that. And then we had to manage so I think having kids and then just life, to realize that greater people than James and I
Mm-hmm.
have fallen prey
Right.
to pushing back on boundaries. And all the listeners that are listening, I mean, like, there are great people who've put themselves in compromising situations, who've fallen into that, but had no intention to do that.
Right.
And so I
Yeah,
think
and I think the other thing about that too is like our kids have grown up in a totally different way of life
1000%.
than we did. Secrecy in relationships is a lot easier today than it was when we were dating. Like we had to really be intentional about being together, connecting physically. Today with, smartphones and social media and video, FaceTime and so forth, it's so easy to allow boundaries to
be eroded.
And kind of disappear because you can grow a intimate relationship a lot faster than we could when we were younger. And so, I mean, again, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have email. So like email wasn't even a thing when we were dating. So
Yes.
Different times.
different
Different
times. So
times.
when you think about the speed of connection
Mhm.
today and the speed of how close you can get to know somebody, and I think the danger in that is that you can get to know somebody so quickly on the surface that you don't have maybe the perspective of time to actually get to know the person's character or who they really are. And so I think that's a real different paradigm of how we would see relationships today than when we were dating younger, is that we had this long process of time to really get to know each other, and not just on a romantic basis, but like who we really were and the challenges and so forth before we put ourselves in maybe compromising situations.
It made me just think of like even our phone conversations, they were landlines.
Yeah.
So they were connected to a wall.
Right.
So
Right.
we're not able to walk away from people.
Yeah.
There was an
Right. That's
accountability
very
around us
good point.
that even in our dorm rooms, or like we'd have to, if we were going to have conversation that was incredibly intimate, which we know that people have in direct message or texting and images and all that kind of stuff, and FaceTime in the bedrooms when you should be. There's just so much.
Yeah, there was physical built-in boundaries, just in the way culture operated, the way communication operated, that aren't there today.
Right.
And so I think it would be a lot. I mean, if we put ourselves now dating, I mean, we would have to approach it a lot differently. And so,
that's probably why I'm cautious about my kids being in cars alone, or some of the boundaries is that they're actually closer because of their communication and other means than we had that we just didn't have.
Right.
Very interesting. I think I've seen this to be true too, even for those who maybe aren't in relationships. Getting physical is like you can get emotionally attached way faster. And I think of like, this is kind of silly, but even talk to people who are like on Snapchat every day and they're like keeping their streak, they're like, I gotta keep it up, but like there's an emotional attachment that's forming that's like just different and odd. And so I don't know, what would you say to those who maybe are maybe exploring like they're getting emotionally connected really, really quick and for a month, for 2 months, and then it's like, oh, moving on to the next person, because I think that happens. That they don't kind of steward those boundaries to go, is this a good idea for me to emotionally go there? Like, how can we protect our emotions? And
it makes me think of when James and I talk about intimacy in marriage, it's not all just sexual. It's what you're saying. There's an emotional intimacy that happens, a spiritual intimacy, physical, which is not related to sex. It's physical touch, recreational, having fun together.
Right.
Well, when you're not balancing all of those things, you're like all that emotion, but emotional intimacy is real.
Yeah.
It is, and it does bind our hearts. And so when we, it binds us in a different way than we would physically or sexually, but it's still a very true thing, and our hearts get wrapped up in it. So when we dismiss that and roll over to the next person, there's a lot of stuff still attached. When we talk about freedom, we walk through breaking emotional ties that we have, not just sexual ties, but unhealthy emotional ties. So you're speaking to that, which that actually clouds and informs our future relationships when we allow that. Not to mention it's disposing of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in a while back, we did a talk just on the power of bonding and the steps of bonding. And if you look at the 12 steps of bonding, the 12th is sexual intimacy, but the ones that build up to that are all around real personal, this emotional connection. And
But it paces it.
It
It's
paces
not,
it because all intimacy is really the glue of it is that emotional tie. And so
Right.
when people jump
Mhm.
into emotional relationships and so forth, I agree they can be actually sometimes more damaging or more harmful than, you know, maybe even sometimes physically,
right.
because you're so attached emotionally at a
So
emotional
to your
level.
point, and that's so good, James, because
Mhm.
to your point of like, what do you do? Is what is a person who's on a streak or
Mhm.
you know
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
like what do you do to help pace that? And I would say exercise discipline.
Mhm.
Like go maybe a streak isn't for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe if that's a problem or if I get too vulnerable and share a lot of
Yep.
details that emotionally connects us, maybe I should, you know, instill some discipline and shut
That's
thy
good.
mouth,
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we all have to, wherever it could be small things,
Right.
that we're actually exercising discipline and practicing something that helps us restrain ourselves, which is good for our soul and good for our spirit. Yeah.
That's great.
Right. It's
Yeah.
good.
You're talking about ultimately becoming like a healthy person. I mean, to be
Right.
disciplined is okay. Like I want to work towards my own health, and we know that for any relationship, especially with two people, it's going to be a healthy relationship.
Yep.
Then it's the sum of two healthy people.
Right.
Mhm.
So, what are maybe some key indicators of a healthy relationship or healthy person that would know, like, okay, I'm ready for a serious relationship? What are some indicators?
Yeah. I'll give a few and then
Mhm.
maybe you can jump in. I think one is personal character. Like how is your how would you rate your character? Like, are you somebody who's trustworthy, somebody who doesn't fold up in pressure but holds up under pressure?
That's great.
When you start engaging in a connection with another person, do you have the emotional character, the strength um, to to stand up to that? I think personal convictions and boundaries, like what convictions and boundaries have you already set for yourself that
That's great.
you're not going to compromise your character in the midst of a relationship. You're going to find somebody who aligns with your convictions and your
Mhm.
boundaries. I think another one that we work with a lot with couples who are actually maybe preparing to get married is the concept of independence.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, in culture today, we have so many young people that are growing up in this helicopter parent
Yep.
culture where parents are really overly involved in their kids' lives, and
It's problematic.
it
Yeah.
is problematic, especially when a kid hasn't learned how to move to
Yep.
independence from their parents. And so I think being intentional of like not rebelling, it's not
Mhm.
rebelling, it's independence. And
Right.
as parents, like one of the things that we want to do with our young adult kids all along is that they should be able to be independent on their own. And
That's great.
so if you're in a place that you are still highly dependent upon your parents and to support you and to
Give you
nurture you, give
boundaries.
you boundaries and so forth, you're probably not ready.
Yep.
So you need to work on that piece
Mhm.
before become dependent on
Mhm.
your independence before you can become interdependent
That's great.
in another
Mhm.
relationship.
Yeah, I like that. I love your first two. Well, I love them all, but the personal character and your personal convictions. I feel like you have to know yourself
Yeah.
and assess yourself. Like you said, rate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I know if my personal character will hold up. No one can judge that because that's my heart, my motives, what my relationship with the Lord. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to really um, measure and think and process yourself and know that your other partner that your significant other that you want to date, that isn't their place to tell
Mhm.
you if your character can stand.
Yeah.
Right.
It's your place to determine, and it's your place independent of your parents to be able to say, my convictions and my personal character is my choice,
Mhm.
my relationship with the Lord,
Right.
that He's telling me, He's informing me, Holy Spirit is
Yep.
speaking to me, and that I'm not reliant on James' personal convictions when we're in
Mhm.
a dating
Right.
relationship. However, James' personal convictions in our dating relationship was the model of what I feel like single men should do
Mhm.
these
That's
days,
great.
which is he honored me. He never put me in a situation. His convictions, his personal
So great.
convictions of boundaries was stronger than his lust for me.
Right.
And you were lusting. We got pictures. Yeah. But if going, I appreciate it. Now, as a female, I want to come in and have those convictions too. But in a dating relationship, I really respected that James, his personal character and boundaries were there. I think in knowing if you're ready for a relationship, I come and I'm open about coming from a very dysfunctional home, a lot of baggage, a lot of things that actually impacted and have the potential to impact relationships, my friendships, my work relationships, and obviously my significant relationship with James. And so even when we talked about us walking around the track, I was telling him, hey, I have this baggage in my life.
Mhm.
I'm fatherless. The impact of no father on a girl's life is huge. And so it's going to show up. Are we prepared for that? What really I didn't know then is that I was on a pursuit. That language was saying, I'm on a pursuit for healing.
Yep.
I'm on a pursuit for God to do a work in my life. And that healing, I think you have to be honest about it,
Mhm.
aware. You're not in denial. And then there's this like full disclosure with someone you're pursuing a relationship with. But if you can't do that, if you don't know that your past of even maybe something that's happened to you as a child will impact your relationships, if you're in denial about that and you're not walking in healing and trying to find out what those things are, whether it's counseling, pastoral counseling, inner healing, then you're not ready.
Yeah.
You need to be dealing with that. And I'm still dealing with it.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not like it goes away, but I have been in pursuit
But
of help.
I think that all goes to the point that one of the things we always say to young couples is like, your relationship, no relationship should complete you.
You're right.
The Apostle Paul said you're completed in Christ.
Mhm.
And so when it talks about your character, the convictions and boundaries, your independence, all of that has to do your emotional healing. All
Right.
it has to do about being complete in Christ, and it all starts in that relationship, right?
Yep.
And so if you're going to a sign of a healthy person ready for a relationship is somebody who is complete in Christ,
Mhm.
That's great.
not looking to be completed.
That's it.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
our
So good.
relationship should complement
Enhance.
each other, enhance, and should we should be able to celebrate the uniqueness, but ultimately you have to be whole in Christ before you can
Mhm.
actually give yourself wholly
Yep.
to somebody else.
You know, I when I lead myself or James leads himself, that puts us in a place of him not having to lead me
Mhm.
or there's being some tension point that makes me have to grow up.
Right.
It's like, no, I want to grow up. I have this internal motivation for God to do a work. And so I've always gone, James, I don't want you to have to worry about me
Mhm.
emotionally. He cares about me emotionally, but he's not responsible for my
It's good.
health. And so, and that starts well before you get married, well
Right.
before you get married, well before you're dating.
Yep.
That's right.
I think we see that a lot with, young college kids. They have that void or they have that thing,
Mhm.
and you look to
Mhm.
relationships,
Mhm.
all these things to fill it, and then that doesn't work out, and then you're, 2 steps behind where you were, and then you're,
Yeah.
all of this. And I love you're talking about character and conviction. Those are so, so powerful. But also when we talk about what I wish I knew about relationships, why it's also so complex and nuanced is you can be rock star in your conviction and your character and have no idea how to communicate to somebody.
Mm.
Yeah, it's true.
So when you guys look back, or maybe on your journey, you guys have obviously grown a lot in your communication because communication is a very important thing for
Yeah.
all relationships, like
Yep.
friendships, romantic relationships, working relationships.
relationships.
I mean, communication, we're doing it right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you do it
Yeah.
all the time, texting, email, all of these things. So what are some things that you learned along the way? Or maybe you look back at that season in Nashville, we started dating. You're like,
Mhm.
if we only knew these couple things about communication
Mhm.
then,
Yeah.
Mhm.
where, it's so important.
Yeah. Well, thinking about that communication is an ongoing skill that has to be developed.
Yeah.
You never arrive.
That's great.
So if you think that you're the master communicator, whether you're a public speaker, whether podcast or in relationship with work people and a husband, and like James and I this week had a communication mishap.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it took a lot of effort for us to I'm like, Jesus, help me. Verbally communicate our misunderstanding.
Yep.
It was a misunderstanding. And so I had to I said, I'm going to walk away and give myself a minute. And he respected that. That's skill
Mm-hmm.
because I have a lot of words, as you can tell. Yeah. And a lot of passion and emotion and words for emotion. And so I came back and said, hey, I think we're on the 2 different pages, but trying to communicate about something.
Mhm.
And he's like, you're exactly right. It was about finances. So finance is a hot point for
Yep.
us. So,
Yeah.
but I just go, we're 30 years in marriage, 35 years in being together, and we're still learning about communication. That moment I had the choice. I can make this whole evening tense
Mm-hmm.
and blow us up, or I can rise up to the woman of God that I
Yeah.
am and lead through this communicating effectively. And so I would say it never stops, but you do have to be intentional about learning.
Yeah. I think one of the things that if I were to go back and talk to my 18, 19-year-old self, I would probably talk about the importance of emotional intelligence and communication. When I talk about emotional intelligence, it's ability to manage your own emotions and the emotions of somebody else, the people around you. And it's actually, what I wish I would have known back then is that there's some skills, just like in anything else, that actually can be developed to grow in that area, and it will affect every area of your communication. So for me, when I was younger, I didn't lack empathy. I just didn't leverage empathy. And empathy is so important in relationships, to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. But not only that, but also to be able to understand when somebody's affected or something's going on, and be able to identify that. And so, so I think, if I were to say, hey, what's one thing that you could do to develop communication? It's like, how emotionally intelligent are you? And sometimes you need some feedback. You need some tools to know how to do that. But like, if you lack impulse control, that's going to affect your communication. If you lack, emotional awareness, that's going to affect your communication,
Social
empathy,
awareness.
social awareness. And so, we communicate all day long, and it's not just the words we say. Actually, scientists would say only 7% of our communication is actually in words. The majority of our communication is in tone and body language.
That's great.
And so, you may be a great orator, but if you have low emotional IQ, you're going to struggle in your communication. And that's one of the things we even see with married couples is that some couples who struggle in their communication have real deficits in their personal awareness, their self-awareness of some skills that can be developed. And so I think that's where I would say is, if I were having coffee with a young person, is like, how are you doing in these areas? And are there some skills that maybe are lacking that you could develop that are going to affect all areas of communication, every relationship, whether it's your future spouse or your work relationship or friendships or whatever?
That did show up for you, your lack of leveraging empathy in your all relationships, and in your work relationship in particular too. One of the things when you're talking about all of those skills, when we work with married people 10 years in, 20 years in, they actually think that each other have bad hearts because they're really bad at communication. And we're like, you don't have bad hearts. You have really bad skills.
Yeah.
Right.
You have your skills are in a deficit.
Right.
And so, but when your communication skills aren't always sharpening, then it does feel like there's a personal, you start thinking things are personal, or there's a personal character attack on your spouse or your relationship. And it's like, no, there may be, but most often people just have really poor skills and they don't have bad hearts.
And I would say too, just if somebody's listening that they're in a relationship right now, a dating relationship or whatever, and they're having real communication issues and challenges, you need to deal with it now, because, unrealistic expectations destroy relationships in the future. Like, if you think that, hey, this is just going to get better,
no,
it doesn't get better. And if you have issues now in your dating relationship and you enter into marriage, they're only going to amplify.
Yeah.
And so you have to deal with some of those communication issues. And communication, when you get to the root of basically every issue when it comes to long-term relationships and marriage and so forth, communication is foundational. All those things, whether it's finances or sex or in-laws or whatever, communication is key. So it is a skill that you really need to develop.
That's great. We're going on 6 years in December,
That's
and
awesome.
something it's really hard to believe, honestly, but something I'm still working on and got to get a lot better at is my listening nonverbal communication. There's so many times Tara and I are on the couch and she's talking to me, and I have a very intense resting face, and RBF face, resting bored face.
Bored face. Okay, there you go. I like that.
Resting
I
bored
like
face.
that.
And she'll sometimes stop and go like, "Are you upset?" And I'm like, "Huh? I'm good." And I'm like, man, like I don't want to be that kind of person who, when someone else is telling me something serious or has a concern, that I look upset.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I got to maybe work on my muscles in my face.
Good.
But that's something I'm going, man, I got to get better at that, because
Mhm.
so much of communication is also listening and trying to
That's
grow
good.
as a listener, because that's definitely been a hindrance if she comes to me and I'm like,
Yeah.
look like
Mhm.
I'm going to tear the
Right.
carpet up. You know what I mean? And like,
Exactly.
especially with my kids too. I'm like, I don't want to be an intense
Mhm.
all
Yeah.
the time, so
That's really great.
That's good.
that's, yeah, pray for me there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
So
That's right.
I'm
Well,
working on it.
you and James have similar personalities, and
Mhm.
Tara and I have similar personalities, and I sometimes think that James is maybe not bored, but he's checked out. Like,
Yeah.
where are you? Are you
Yeah.
there while I'm talking? And so
Yeah.
he's that skill of like being engaged, leaning in, and whatever you have to do. I'm sure it's monotonous because I try to reduce my
You
words.
do have a lot more words than I
Yeah, I
do,
do, but-
obviously.
So does
Yeah.
So does Tara.
Bless us.
Yeah.
Bless us, girls.
Yeah, I love it. Well, y'all linked up in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
so it is 2023.
I love
Yep.
that linked up. That's a very
Yeah.
modern term for
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
We could use that. So
we stole the phrase from some friends that we met way back in the 1900s.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that. Well, I just crossed into the 30s, so I'm 30, and I'm seeing like my dad's wardrobe start to come
Mhm.
back. I was just in Pennsylvania, stole some stuff and
Yeah.
just took it back, but a little bit different. What are some fashion things you think from maybe your day that are coming back, or what are some things in your closet that you're like, man,
Hope that comes back.
yeah, or I'm ready to pull it out, or
Mm.
what do you think?
I don't think we're
I think
brave
we've
enough
seen
to
some
pull
pictures.
anything out. But if you started wearing something that was back from the 80s, we would be like, we're trying to rock it. I think, which I've seen, Pastor Stephen Robertson has done this, is you peg the bottom of your pant legs.
Uh-huh.
You fold it over and roll it up.
Yeah.
I've seen him do that once, so
Yeah.
I don't know if he's trying to bring it back, but that's totally an 80s thing. So
Yeah.
it's like a regular straight leg pair of jeans, but you
Peg them, yeah.
peg them. And so, yeah. Do you
Yeah.
know what that is?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
Yeah.
You were looking, you
Yeah.
had the resting board face. So
Help
Yeah.
coach me. Coach me. Yeah.
I didn't know if you were with me,
No.
but now you're with me.
See?
You know what it is. See?
Okay, now
Yeah.
imagine my wife. This is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, well, some things have already come back because I've been wearing a lot of like joggers that
Mhm.
have a lot of pockets and they resemble parachute pants.
Yeah.
They haven't parachute pants fully haven't come back.
They haven't, but there's some style there that's similar. But I think for me, the big thing back in my day was Miami Vice. And
It was a show.
It was a
in case
show.
People don't know.
People may know Miami Vice. I don't know. But
Mm.
Sonny, one of the cops, always wore these light sports jackets,
Uh-huh.
and they were cool because you
Yeah.
can wear them down,
Right.
or you could push up the sleeves. And I don't like things on my sleeves, so I wish we could bring back the sports jacket. You just push up your sleeves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But they were really colorful. Would you
They
do
were.
that again?
No, probably not. But the
Okay.
sleeves are
Yeah.
cool.
Well, I love it. Well, thanks so much for being with us today and for sharing your insights and wisdoms and funny stories. And I'm thankful JC never showed up. 'Cause
I know,
so
we
am I.
wouldn't be here today.
That's
but,
right. That's right.
I love it. You got artist spousing. Anything else you want to let the listeners know about, check in, lean into?
I wondered if you should put in the show notes some resources on emotional intelligence.
That'd be great.
Some
Yeah, we can
easy
do that.
reads and stuff that would be
That'd
helpful.
be good. Yeah. Love for you to check out our podcast,
Yeah.
Artist Spousing. Airs every other week.
Come
And even if you're not married, we talk a lot about issues of communication and just relational issues that would help in
Yeah.
any relationship.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you
Friends,
for having
those who have been listening, make sure you follow these people, listen to them, check out the podcast. And if you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, share it, comment, whatever you got to do to stay with us. And we hope that you've been enjoying this season called What I Wish I Knew. We will see you next time. We love you. We out.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Young and Adulting. Follow us on Instagram at cf.youngadults. And if there's a topic you'd like to talk about, we want to hear about it. Send us an email or leave a comment with your thoughts. We'll see you next time.